Hi, everyone. In this chapter, we are going to talk through sexual disorders and dysfunctions. And before we even get into it, I want to talk about something that's just the questions about how do we talk about sex and gender and sexuality in general. And I think it's a kind of a touchy subject because of sort of the culture and the history around sexuality and gender issues. And so I think it's helpful to start off and just know how to refer to some things related to sexuality and gender. Now, of course, I'm not saying that this has anything to do directly with sexual disorders and dysfunctions. I'm just mentioning these because um, as uh, as they play out, you will want to know how to navigate all these kind of sexuality, sexual identity, gender identity issues. So here are a few definitions. First off, sexual orientation. I think most people are pretty familiar with this idea. It is a person's sexual identity in relationship to the gender to which they are attracted. And so this is whether a person is heterosexual, homosexual, bisexual. It stops the list there, although there's a lot more recognized sexual orientations beyond that. There's asexual, pansexual, a few other ones that seem to better connect with what people identify in terms of sexual orientation. Um, Secondly, is sexual identity. Sexual identity is a biological manifestation associated with a particular gender. So, penis is associated with the male sex. Um, uh, the XX um, chromosome is associated with being female. So, it's again, it's the biological is related to the sexual identity. Now, that's different from gender identity. Gender identity is a cultural role. And for many people, there's a match between the sexual identity and the gender identity. But for some, there's a mismatch, and there's this felt sense that I am my role, who I am in terms of the culture that I live in, is different from the sexual identity that I have been born into. And so there's a term called assigned gender. This is the sexual characteristics of a child at birth, and that the use of the term assigned gender because the person being born never had any choice in the matter. It was decided by the doctor. It was decided by the the body that they were provided and assigned to, and so felt gender identity was never assessed for that child, for that newborn, and so there's a sense of again, it was given to you. Now, um, also there is another concept related to gender identity, and that's the concept of the transgender. It refers to persons whose gender identity or gender expression differs from their sex at birth. So it's an adjective, it's not a noun. So you don't talk about a transgender, you talk about transgender people, that they are, it's an adjective to describe people. Now, you the whenever you label one group and not label other groups, it if there's a felt sense that it is reducing them, and so the term to describe people whose gender identity matches their sex at birth is cisgender. So for many, and by no means all of you, but for many of you, you would be considered cisgender because your sexual identity would match your gender identity. And then lastly is this idea of transsexual. Now, oftentimes people assume that if the person's sexual identity doesn't match their gender identity, they will want to have a gender reassignment or hormonal changes, but that's not necessarily the case. So transsexual is a person who is transgender and also who wants to or does live as a member of the sex other than their assigned sex at birth. So again, you can be transgender and be, for instance, assigned sex of female, but have the gender identity of male, but you may actually have no desire to change your actual sexual identity through sexual reassignment surgery or something like that. And so the transsexual is the subgrouping that do want those transitions. And so again, hopefully that's helpful. And this next slide is actually from a nonprofit organization, the Trevor Project, that specializes in suicide prevention within the LGBTQ plus community. And I found it to be really helpful for kind of, allowing us to sort of understand all of these. And it's recognizing a spectrum. Our sexuality and gender identity aren't set in stone. And for many people, they can be fluid. And the spectrum kind of helps people visualize not just a person and where they fit, but even on a moment by moment basis, how they may see themselves. So for biological sex, again, this is sexual identity. There's the male and female, but there's also intersex identities. There's a number of different syndromes where people can be born with either sort of indeterminate sexual organs, or they could be born with XX but have male genitalia, or there's these different conditions which actually make the clear distinction between male and female a little bit less clear. And then there's gender identity, and this is how you feel on the inside. So there is a woman, and there is man, and if you are in between those gender identities, you might identify as gender fluid, transgender, gender queer, non-binary, and then there's gender expression. And so you may feel, for instance, you may feel that you're female, that you're a woman, but you may actually feel, in terms of how you present yourself to others, that you're perhaps more masculine or maybe androgynous in terms of how you present yourself. And so again, there's that continuum. Then the gender presentation. This one is interesting because some people are not actually seen as the gender that you are or the sex that you are, that people can sometimes misgender you. And so the gender presentation, how the world sees you, it could see you as a man or as a woman, or they could see you as a transgender. And then finally, sexual orientation. Who do you like? Who are you sexually attracted to? And so you could be attracted to women, attracted to men, and then sort of the characteristics in the middle: bisexual, pansexual, or again, asexual, not having a sexual desire towards anyone in particular. All right, so I wanted to go over that. Hopefully that's helpful. And yeah, I'll end there.